Broadcasting from the base of Caradhras in Eregion, Middle-earth, this is the Secret Fire Podcast, sent to burn at the heart of the world, episode number 33. I'm Michael.
And I'm Micah.
On this episode, Caradhras has been satisfied. The invaders had been beaten. The company has been defeated. Well, what now? We journey to the Gates of Moria, and we invite you to come along, join the fellowship, become a servant of the Secret Fire, right here on the GCT Network.
This is your Great Commission transmission.
Micah, it's been a while again.
Sure has.
There's been a lot going on, and there's going to continue being some activities going on here in the near future.
Yep.
Because you just had your high school prom, your senior prom. How was that?
It was fun.
You got all dressed up, rented a suit, was looking good.
Tailor fit suit I've ever had.
And you really liked that, huh?
I did.
I don't think I've ever had a tailor fit suit. Those are expensive, but
Yep.
when you have one, it fits the way it's supposed to fit, huh?
Yeah, it feels good.
Looked like $1 million. You and your special friend, your girlfriend, and well, she was. What was the big news at prom about your girlfriend Ray?
She got prom queen.
She was crowned prom queen. Isn't that awesome? You know, for folks that know Micah, he's, well, our whole family, we're a pretty introverted family, and we keep to ourselves, and we're not out there, you know, hooping and hollering and bringing attention to ourselves. And Micah, your story is such that, well, our kids are all homeschooled. Most people know that, but you are part of a homeschool co-op that you attend on Fridays. And what do you remember what grade you were in when you started this particular co-op?
No.
Well, but Ray has a lot of the same personality traits as you do, right? And you were two people that just were, well, it was magnetism, I guess. You were drawn together and you were best friends for many years before you guys decided, hey, we're more than friends. So that just makes it that much more special that Ray was crowned prom queen that night. And you have, this week is graduation.
This week?
I believe, or is it next week?
It's coming. It's not this week.
It's next week?
Yeah.
This week is practice, rehearsal? Mm-hmm. Or is that next week? I don't have my day planner up here, but you're about to graduate from high school. And you listeners out there that, like I'm thinking specifically of patron Saint Ron of the South Farthing, who used to listen to the old Middle-earth Minutes podcast from many years ago, 2011, right around there, 2010, 2011. Micah, I forced him to be my co-host on Middle-earth Minutes those many years ago. You were 11 years old, and here you are about to graduate from high school. I believe Middle-earth Minutes is still available in the iTunes store, so if anybody out there is not familiar with that, we used to have some fun doing that. So here we are, just you and I again. Brendan's not here this show, and we are going to continue our journey. Well, as we said in the introduction, Caradhras, well, beat the rear ends of the company, basically. You shall not pass, is what Caradhras said, isn't it?
Pretty much, yep.
Which is a little bit of a forward here. So let's go ahead and hop into this. Let's back up, get a running start. So we will reread the last few paragraphs of the previous chapter, The Ring Goes South. You didn't have anything to add to our discussion on part 4, did you?
If I did, I have forgotten it by
Long
now.
forgotten
Yeah.
it. It's been a month and a few days or so. All right, so here we go, backing up. They passed through the lane as they're retreating, but hardly had Frodo touched the ground when a deep rumble there rolled down, a fall of stones and slithering snow. The spray of it half blinded the company as they crouched against the cliff. And when the air cleared again, they saw that the path was blocked behind them. So the door was shut. Mm-hmm. Enough! Enough! Cried Gimli. We are departing as quickly as we may! And indeed, with that last stroke, the malice of the mountain seemed to be expended, as if Caradhras was satisfied that the invaders had been beaten off and would not dare to return. The threat of snow lifted, the clouds began to break, and the light grew broader. As Legolas had reported, they found that the snow became steadily more shallow as they went down, so that even the hobbits could trudge along. Soon they all stood once more on the flat shelf at the head of the steep slope where they had felt the first flakes of snow the night before. The morning was now far advanced. From the high place, they looked backward or westward over the lower lands. Far away in the tumble of country that lay at the foot of the mountain was the dell from which they had started to climb the pass. Frodo's legs ached. He was chilled to the bone and hungry, and his head was dizzy as he thought of the long and painful march downhill. Black specks swam before his eyes. He rubbed them, but the black specks remained. In the distance, below him, but still high above the lower foothills, dark dots were circling in the air. "The birds again," said Aragorn, pointing down. "That cannot be helped now," said Gandalf. "Whether they are good or evil or have nothing to do with us at all, we must go down at once. Not even on the knees of Caradhras will we wait for another nightfall." A cold wind flowed down behind them as they turned their backs on the Redhorn Gate and stumbled wearily down the slope. Caradhras had defeated them. A lot of good drama.
Yes.
All right, and that, what is that called? Anthropomorphizing of the mountain. That is very much a callback to the classic literature and epics that Tolkien so loved, isn't it? All right, so we are ready to start the next chapter, A Journey in the Dark.
One of the best.
It is. Before we go on, right here in the very first paragraph, there's going to be a little comment that I want to make, but I want to take this opportunity to play a song. We haven't had a song in quite a while, and we have some great news that came from Mark Gunn that the Brobdingnagian Bards are back. They're back, baby, and they are they're performing live and private performances via their Patreon page. You can find out more on their website, thebards.net. But a few weeks ago, I sent an email to Andrew, the other half of the Brobdingnagian Bards, because I had never asked him for his permission to play any of the songs that he owned the rights to of the Brobdingnagian Bards. And of course, he said, please, by all means, play it. So we can play anything that we want to by the Brobdingnagian Bards now, as well as all the music that Mark Gunn has done on his own. Mark Gunn has done. That actually rhymes. I like that. So this is a little song off of their album, Real Men Wear Kilts. There was an earlier version on their album, Affair to Remember, but I chose this version for us today, and it's called Health to the Company. It's not Lord of the Rings specific, but it sure does fit in. And so here we go. The Brobdingnagian Bards doing Health to the Company.
Kind friends and companions, join me in rhyme. Come and lift up your voices in chorus with mine. Let us drink and be merry, all grief to refrain. For we may and might never all meet here again. And here's a health to the company, and one to my lass. Let us drink and be merry, all out of one glass. Let us drink and be merry, all grief to refrain. For we may and might never all meet here again. Here's a health to the wee lass that I love so well. For style and for beauty sure none can excel. There's a smile on her countenance as she sits on my knee. Sure there's no one in this wide world as happy as me. And here's a health to the company, and one to my lass. Let us drink and be merry, all out of one glass. Let us drink and be merry, all grief to refrain. For we may and might never all meet here again. Our ship lies at harbor, she's ready to dock. I wish her safe landing without any shock. And if e'er I should meet you by land or by sea, I will always remember your kindness to me. And here's a health to the company, and one to my lass. Let us drink and be merry, all out of one glass. Let us drink and be merry, all grief to refrain. For we may and might never all meet here again. And here's a health to the company, and one to my lass. Let us drink and be merry, all out of one glass. Let us drink and be merry, all grief to refrain. For we may and might never all meet here again.
Oh, fantastic. Again, the Brobdingnagian Bards doing Health to the Company. You can get that off of their album, Real Men Wear Kilts, which is a fantastic, well, all of their stuff is fantastic. Get that, get their album, Affair to Remember, and get all of their other albums as well as their new material that they're working on here. Happy, we're pleased all over that the Brobdingnagian Bards are back. Again, that's the bards.net. Find out more about them. And talking about drinking and being merry and those things, it ties right into the beginning of the chapter here. And just a heads up for everybody that has been waiting for a new episode of the Secret Fire podcast. We've heard from you via Twitter and on Facebook, and appreciate all of you all reaching out and saying, hey, where'd you go? Where's the next adventure? I need to I can't mow my lawn until there's a new episode of the Secret Fire podcast.
Hey, I understand that perfectly.
So this is going to be a little bit longer. We have a whole lot of things to talk about in this chapter. I mean, this one is just jam-packed, especially with the Christian themes. Let's go ahead and begin. It was evening, and the gray light was again waning fast when they halted for the night. They were very weary. The mountains were veiled in deepening dusk, and the wind was cold. Gandalf spared them one more mouthful each of the Mirivor of Rivendell. When they had eaten some food, he called a council. Remember that when they were in dire straits battling Caradhras, he pulled out this flask. Elrond sent this with me. It's for times of great need only. Just take a mouthful and pass it around, right? And it instantly warmed them. You know, Tolkien, being a good, devout Catholic, is thinking back to the Eucharist. And we will see the bread portion of that come up in the story later on. But this flask, this drink, you know, I'm convinced that he's using it as a picture of the Eucharist. Now, Eucharist is a word that the Catholics use, and probably the Orthodox Church uses. Us in the Protestant tradition, we don't use that word, but we ought to. It's a wonderful, wonderful word. It comes from the Greek word Eucharistia, and also from, which is, I don't know what the word is. What the word is Eucharistos. Okay, which means grateful. Well, Eucharistria means thanksgiving, gratitude. And what we call the Lord's Supper or communion, it's the same thing. You're all together and you are giving thanks and gratitude as you are partaking of the Eucharist. And I really do believe that if we sat down with Professor Tolkien and said, is this a picture of the Eucharist? He would say, of course it is. Of course it is. Look at the blessing that it bestows on the drinkers. And that is why I chose that song by the Brobdingnagian Bards. Health to the company. What does the Eucharist provide to followers of Christ? Spiritual health. It's a blessing, right? That's beautiful. So when they had eaten some food, he called a council. We cannot, of course, go on again tonight, he said. The attack at the Red Horn Gate has tired us out, and we must rest here for a while. And then where are we to go? Asked Frodo. We still have our journey and our errand before us, answered Gandalf. We have no choice but to go on, or to return to Rivendell. Pippin's face brightened visibly at the mere mention of the return to Rivendell. Merry and Sam looked up hopefully, but Aragorn and Boromir made no sign. Frodo looked troubled. Pippin's face brightened visibly at the mere mention of the return to Rivendell. In the book of Luke, verse 9 and 62, chapter 9, verse 62 out of the New American Standard Bible. But Jesus said to him, no one after putting his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom of God. We need to keep our eye on Pippin. And we already know Pippin's story arc, but let's keep this in mind, because as Jesus was telling about the great tribulation to come, as he's talking to his apostles and his disciples during that Olivet discourse, one of the things that he said to them in Luke chapter 17, verse 32 was, remember Lot's wife. What was he reminding them about Lot's wife? As Lot, his wife, his daughters were fleeing Sodom and Gomorrah as the destruction is taking place, what did Lot's wife do? She looked back. They were told, don't even look back. And when she looked back, she was turned to a pillar of salt. Why? Why was that act of looking back over her shoulder worthy of that kind of punishment? Because they were told, don't look back. She was looking back longingly. Pippin is looking back longingly to Rivendell. That's where I want to be. Lot's wife was saying, that's my home. I heard a preacher one time say, all of my favorite stores are there, my favorite restaurants, all that's my home. In Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 3, the writer of Hebrews, Paul, says, therefore, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, he's talking about the hall of faith that he just ran through in chapter 11. Let us also lay aside every encumbrance and the sin which so easily entangles us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Remember, again, going back to the flight to the ford from Weathertop, and Aragorn continuing to tell them, keep hope, keep faith. If we make it to Elrond's house, there is comfort. The tables are well laden, but you cannot give up hope. You cannot look back at Sodom and Gomorrah. You cannot look back to the law, is what Paul is writing to the Hebrew readers, the Jewish readers. Don't look back. Fix our eyes on Jesus, he continues, the author and perfecter of faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him who has endured such hostility by sinners against himself, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Pippin, don't look back to Rivendell. That's what Gandalf is saying. We have no choice to go on or go back to Rivendell. Well, what's the consequences of that? Whoops, I deleted that note. I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I was back there, he said, but how can I return without shame? This is Frodo talking. How can I return without shame, unless there is indeed no other way, and we are already defeated? You are right, Frodo, said Gandalf. To go back is to admit defeat and face worse defeat to come. If we go back now, then the ring must remain there. We shall not be able to set out again. Then sooner or later, Rivendell will be besieged, and after a brief and bitter time, it will be destroyed. The Ringwraiths are deadly enemies, but they are only shadows yet of the power and terror they would possess if the ruling ring was on their master's hand again. The thread throughout the New Testament, all the epistles of the writers, are that these converts to Jesus are being waylaid and attacked at all times by the Judaizers. Those that were coming in and saying, you have to go back to the law. You have to go back to the law. You Gentiles, you need to be circumcised and you need to keep the law. And over again, the image is given. That is looking back, and that is death. The law, being a perfect law, brings about one result, and that is death. Pippin, you want to go back to Rivendell? That means death. Then we must go on, if there is a way, said Frodo with a sigh. Sam sank back into gloom. There is a way that we may attempt, said Gandalf. I thought from the beginning, when first I considered this journey, that we should try it, but it is not a pleasant way, and I have not spoken of it to the company before. Aragorn was against it until the pass over the mountains had at least been tried. If it is a worse road than the Redhorn Gate, then it must be evil indeed, said Merry. But you had better tell us about it, and let us know the worst at once. Don't hold back. The road that I speak of leads to the mines of Moria, said Gandalf. Only Gimli lifted up his head. A smoldering fire was in his eyes. On all the others a dread fell at the mention of that name. Even to the hobbits it was a legend of vague fear. The road may lead to Moria, but how can we hope that it will lead through Moria? Aragorn said darkly. It is a name of ill omen, said Boromir. Nor do I see the need to go there. If we cannot cross the mountains, let us journey southward until we come to the Gap of Rohan, where men are friendly to my people, taking the road that I followed on my way hither. Or we might pass by and cross the Isen into Langstrand and Lebanon, and so come to Gondor from the regions nigh to the sea. Sorry, I've just got a message on my... My wife is messaging me. We obviously didn't tell Mom that we were starting a show. I want you to remember Boromir's words and all the words that we have heard from him so far in the story, because we are going to mention him a little bit later on here. Things have changed since you last came north, Boromir, answered Gandalf. Did you not hear what I told you of Saruman? With him I may have business of my own ere all is over. Forward! Mm-hmm. But the ring must not come near Isengard, if that can by any means be prevented. The Gap of Rohan is closed to us while we go with the bearer. As for the longer road, we cannot afford the time. We might spend a year in such a journey, and we should pass through many lands that are empty and harborless. Yet they would not be safe. The watchful eyes, both of Saruman and of the enemy, are on them. When you came north, Boromir, you were in the enemy's eyes only one stray wanderer from the south, and a matter of small concern to him. His mind was busy with the pursuit of the ring. But you return now as a member of the ring's company, and you are in peril as long as you remain with us. The danger will increase with every league that we go south under the naked sky. Since our open attempt on the mountain pass, our plight has become more desperate, I fear. I see now little hope if we do not soon vanish from sight for a while and cover our trail. Therefore, I advise that we should go neither over the mountains nor round them, but under them. That is a road, at any rate, that the enemy will least expect us to take. They'd be crazy to take that road, is what.
Yeah. In reference to how Gandalf says, with every league further we go, the more the danger will increase.
Yes.
I love this idea. It's a very common theme in fantasy where the darkness has set up on one end and the light has set up on the other end, but the darkness is creeping along and it's more dense over here, but it's spreading,
Yep, and that really also ties into the narrative of the New Testament. We have a tendency to forget the ominous, foreboding darkness that was creeping as the gospel was spreading. We do not know what he expects, said Boromir. He may watch all roads, likely and unlikely. In that case, to enter Moria would be to walk into a trap, hardly better than knocking at the gates of the Dark Tower itself. The name of Moria is black. You speak of what you do not know when you liken Moria to the stronghold of Sauron, answered Gandalf. I alone of you have ever been in the dungeons of the Dark Lord, and only in his older and lesser dwelling in Dol Guldur. I can't wait for the Amazon series.
Yes, they better explore that. Northern Mirkwood needs to be explored.
Oh, man. Those who pass the gates of Barad-dûr do not return, but I would not lead you into Moria if there was no hope of coming out again. If there are orcs there, it may prove ill for us, that is true. But most of the orcs of the Misty Mountains were scattered or destroyed in the Battle of 5 Armies. I think after we're all done with this, I think we should do The Hobbit next.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay. The Eagles report that orcs are gathering again from afar, but there is a hope that Moria is still free. There is even a chance that dwarves are there, and that in some deep hall of his fathers, Balin, son of Fundin, may be found. However it may prove, one must tread the path that need chooses. I like that. That's a great little maxim there, a little proverb. One must tread the path that need chooses. I will tread the path with you, Gandalf, said Gimli. I will go and look on the halls of Durin, whatever may wait there, if you can find the doors that are shut. Good Gimli, said Gandalf, you encourage me. We will seek the hidden doors together, and we will come through. In the ruin of the dwarves, a dwarf's head will be less easy to bewilder than elves or men or hobbits. Yet it will not be the first time that... Come on, Kindle. It will not be the first time... Come on, Kindle. Okay, let's try this. That I have been to Moria. I sought there long ago for Thrain, son of Thror, after he was lost. I passed through and came out again alive. I, too, once passed the Dimril Gate, said Aragorn quietly. But though I also came out again, the memory is very evil. I do not wish to enter Moria a second time. And I don't wish to enter it even once, said Pippin. He wants to go back to Rivendell. Nor me, muttered Sam. Of course not, said Gandalf. Who would? But the question is, who will follow me if I lead you there? I will, said Gimli eagerly. I will, said Aragorn heavily. You followed my lead almost to disaster in the snow and have said no word of blame. I will follow your lead now, if this last warning does not move you. It is not of the ring, nor of others that I am thinking now, but of you, Gandalf. And I say to you, if you pass the doors of Moria, beware. I will not go, said Boromir. Not unless the vote of the whole company is against me. What do Legolas and the little folks say? The ring-bearer's voice surely should be heard. I do not wish to go to Moria, said Legolas. The hobbit said nothing. Sam looked at Frodo. At last Frodo spoke. I do not wish to go, he said. But neither do I wish to refuse the advice of Gandalf. I beg that there should be no vote until we have slept on it. Gandalf will get votes easier in the light of the morning than in this cold gloom. How the wind howls. At these words, all fell into silent thought. They heard the wind hissing among the rocks and trees, and there was a howling and wailing round them in the empty spaces of the night. Suddenly, Aragorn leapt to his feet. "How the wind howls!" he cried. "It is howling with wolf voices. The wargs have come west of the mountains." "Need we wait until morning, then?" said Gandalf. "It is as I said, the hunt is up. Even if we live to see the dawn, who now will wish to journey south by night with the wild wolves on his trail?" "How far is Moria?" asked Boromir. "There was a door southwest of Caradhras, some 15 miles as the crow flies, and maybe 20 as the wolf runs," answered Gandalf grimly. "Then let us start as soon as it is light tomorrow if we can," said Boromir. "The wolf that one hears is worse than the orc that one fears." "True," said Aragorn, loosening his sword in its sheath. "But where the warg howls, there also the orc prowls."
All these proverbs?
Yeah, proverbs and maxims and
They're
pithy
Boromir's
sayings.
and Aragorn's would be of the same culture. So, Boromir gives one from Gondor and Aragorn
so
retorts.
but you forgot about, yes. "True," said Aragorn. Oh, I already read that. "I wish I had taken Elrond's advice," muttered Pippin to Sam. "Pippin, come on. I'm no good after all. There's not enough of the breed of Bandobras Took,
Goodness.
There is not enough of the breed of Bandobras the Bull Roarer in me. These howls freeze my blood. I don't ever remember feeling so wretched." Yeah, I'm being hard on Pippin. You can't blame the guy.
Mm-hmm.
But he needs to have that faith, that hope. He needs hope. He needs hope, and he's going to get it. "My heart's right down in my toes, Mr. Pippin," said Sam, "but we aren't eaten yet, and there are some stout folk here with us. Whatever may be in store for old Gandalf, I'll wager it isn't a wolf's belly." I love that, just horse sense,
Yeah.
as they call it, from Sam. For their defense in the night, the company climbed to the top of a small hill under which they had been sheltering. It was crowned with a knot of old and twisted trees, about which lay a broken circle of boulder stones. In the midst of it, they lit a fire, for there was no hope that darkness and silence would keep their trail from discovery by the hunting packs. Round the fire they sat, and those that were not on guard dozed uneasily. Poor Bill the pony trembled and sweated where he stood. The howling of the wolves was now all round them, sometimes nearer and sometimes further off. In the dead of night, many shining eyes were seen peering over the brow of the hill. Some advanced almost to the ring of stones. At a gap in the circle, a great dark wolf shape could be seen, halted, gazing at them. A shuddering howl broke from him, as if he were a captain summoning his pack to the assault. Gandalf stood up and strode forward, holding his staff aloft. "Listen, Hound of Sauron," he cried. "Gandalf is here. Fly if you value your foul skin. I will shrivel you from tail to snout if you come within this ring." The wolf snarled and sprang towards them with a great leap. At that moment, there was a sharp twang. Legolas had loosed his bow. There was a hideous yell, and the leaping shape thudded to the ground. The elvish arrow had pierced its throat. The watching eyes were suddenly extinguished. Gandalf and Aragorn strode forward, but the hill was deserted. The hunting packs had fled. All about them the darkness grew silent, and no cry came on the sighing wind. The night was old, and westward the waning moon was setting, gleaming fitfully through the breaking clouds. Suddenly Frodo started from sleep. Without warning, a storm of howls broke out, fierce and wild all about the camp. A great host of wargs had gathered silently and was now attacking them from every side at once. "Fling fuel on the fire!" cried Gandalf to the hobbits. "Draw your blades and stand back to back!" In the leaping light, as the fresh wood blazed up, Frodo saw many gray shapes spring over the ring of stones. More and more followed. Through the throat of one huge leader, Aragorn passed his sword with a thrust, and with a great sweep, Boromir hewed the head off another. Beside them, Gimli stood with his stout legs apart, wielding his dwarf axe. The bow of Legolas was singing. In the wavering firelight, Gandalf seemed suddenly to grow. He rose up, a great, menacing shape, like the monument of some ancient king of stone set upon a hill. I love those descriptions of Gandalf when he grows.
Makes him a kingly figure.
And when he grows in size, his power just welling up. Stooping like a cloud, he lifted a burning branch and strode to meet the wolves. They gave back before him. High in the air, he tossed a blazing brand. It flared with a sudden white radiance like lightning, and his voice rolled like thunder. Go ahead.
After you.
Nar an Endraith Amen. Nar dan I. I don't have no idea how to pronounce that word, he cried, but it looks really majestic.
It sure does.
There was a roar and a crackle, and the tree above him burst into a leaf and bloom of blinding flame. The fire leapt from treetop to treetop. The whole hill was crowned with dazzling light. The swords and knives of the defenders shone and flickered. The last arrow of Legolas kindled in the air as it flew and plunged burning into the heart of a great wolf chieftain. All the others fled. Wow.
That's epic.
It is. That scene is very epic.
I think I ought to mention that where I'm in Lord of the Rings Online is where they stood.
Oh.
Defending themselves.
Is there boulders around it? So.
Mm-hmm. And you may have heard, while we're talking about this, that you can hear, like, wolves snuffling.
I was hearing lots of neat sounds.
Yeah.
If you're listening to the podcast via your earbuds or whatever,
which you should.
You should. This is an immersive podcast. Mm-hmm. Wow. Slowly the fire died till nothing was left but falling ash and sparks. A bitter smoke curled above the burning tree stumps and blew darkly from the hill. As the first light of dawn came dimly in the sky, their enemies were routed and did not return. "What did I tell you, Mr. Pippin?" said Sam, sheathing his sword. "Wolves won't get him." That was an eye-opener, and no mistake. That was an eye-opener. Seeing Gandalf in his power and glory.
Yeah, wherever we hear of Gandalf unleashing his wrath, the earth around the area is just scorched. It's like this power just bursts from him.
And, we'll learn later on when we get to appendices and, extra writings, histories of Middle-earth and things, that Gandalf, the wizards, the Astari, were sent to help kindle in the hearts of men or the free folk to fight, to rise up. They weren't to do it themselves. And so, really, Gandalf almost always keeps his power in check, because his mission is not to fight the battles. His mission is to inspire. But every once in a while, it gets a little bit out of hand, and he has to
do some damage control.
Unveil a little bit of that power. Yep, that was an eye-opener and no mistake. Nearly singed the hair off my head. When the full light of the morning came, no signs of the wolves were to be found, and they looked in vain for the bodies of the dead. No trace of the fight remained but the charred trees and the arrows of Legolas lying on the hilltop. All were undamaged, save one, of which only the point was left. "It is as I feared," said Gandalf. "These were no ordinary wolves hunting for food in the wilderness. Let us eat quickly and go." That day, there, I can hear snuffling there.
Mm-hmm.
Good sounds. That day, the weather changed again, almost as if it was at the command of some power that had no longer any use for snow, since they had retreated from the pass. A power that wished now to have a clear light in which things that moved in the wild could be seen from far away. The wind had been turning through north to northwest during the night, and now it failed. The clouds vanished southwards, and the sky was open, high and blue. As they stood upon the hillside, ready to depart, a pale sunlight gleamed over the mountaintops. "We must reach the doors before sunset," said Gandalf, "or I fear we shall not reach them at all. It is not far, but our path may be winding. For here, Aragorn cannot guide us. He has seldom walked in this country, and only once have I been under the west wall of Moria, and that was long ago. There it lies," he said, pointing away southeastward to where the mountain sides fell sheer into the shadows at their feet. In the distance could be dimly seen a line of bare cliffs, and in their midst, taller than the rest, one great gray wall. "When we left the pass, I led you southwards and not back to our starting point, as some of you may have noticed. It is well that I did so, for now we have several miles less to cross, and haste is needed. Let's go." "I do not know which to hope," said Boromir grimly, "that Gandalf will find what he seeks, or that, coming to the cliff, we shall find the gate lost forever. All choices seem ill, and to be caught between wolves and the wall, the likeliest chance. Lead on." Gimli now walked ahead by the wizard's side, so eager was he to come to Moria. Together they led the company back towards the mountains. The only road of old to Moria from the west had lain along the course of a stream, the Saranen, that ran out from the feet of the cliffs near where the doors had stood. But either Gandalf was astray, or else the land had changed in recent years, for he did not strike the stream where he looked to find it, only a few miles southward from their start. The morning was passing toward noon, and still the company wandered and scrambled in a barren country of red stones. Nowhere could they see any gleam of water or hear any sound of it. All was bleak and dry. Their hearts sank. They saw no living thing, and not a bird was in the sky. But what the night would bring, if it caught them in that lost land, none of them cared to think. Suddenly, Gimli, who had pressed on ahead, called back to them. He was standing on a knoll and pointing to the right. Hurrying up, they saw below them a deep and narrow channel. It was empty and silent, and hardly a trickle of water flowed among the brown and red-stained stones of its bed. But on the near side there was a path, much broken and decayed, that wound its way among the ruined walls and paving stones of an ancient high road. "Ah, here it is at last," said Gandalf. "This is where the stream ran. Saranen, the gate stream, they used to call it. But what has happened to the water, I cannot guess. It used to be swift and noisy. Come, we must hurry on. We are late." The company were footsore and tired, but they trudged doggedly along the rough and winding track for many miles. The sun turned from the noon and began to go west. After a brief halt and a hasty meal, they went on again. Before them the mountains frowned, but their path lay in a deep trough of land, and they could see only the higher shoulders and the far eastward peaks. At length they came to a sharp bend. There the road, which had been veering southward between the brink of the channel and a steep fall of the land to the left, turned and went due east again. Rounding the corner, they saw before them a low cliff, some 5 fathoms high, with a broken and jagged top. Over it, a trickling water dripped through a wide cleft that seemed to have been carved out by a fall that had once been strong and full. "Indeed, things have changed," said Gandalf, "but there is no mistaking the place. There is all that remains of the stair falls. If I remember right, there was a flight of steps cut in the rocks at the side, but the main road wound away left and climbed with several loops up to the level ground at the top. There used to be a shallow valley beyond the falls, right up to the walls of Moria, and the Sarannon flowed through it, with the road beside it. Let us go and see what things are like now." They found the stone steps without difficulty, and Gimli sprang swiftly up them, followed by Gandalf and Frodo. When they reached the top, they saw that they could go no further that way, and the reason for the drying up of the gate stream was revealed. Behind them, the sinking sun filled the cool western sky with glimmering gold. Before them stretched a dark, still lake. Neither sky nor sunset was reflected on its sullen surface. The Sarannon had been dammed and had filled all the valley. Beyond the ominous water were reared vast cliffs, their stern faces pallid in the fading light, final and impassable. No sign of a gate or entrance. Not a fissure or a crack could Frodo see in the frowning stone. "There are the walls of Moria," said Gandalf, pointing across the water, "and there the gate stood once upon a time, the elven door at the end of the road from Holing, by which way we have come. But this way is blocked. None of the company, I guess, will wish to swim this gloomy water at the end of the day. It has an unwholesome look." "We must find a way round the northern edge," said Gimli. "The first thing for the company to do is to climb up by the main path and see where that will lead us. Even if there were no lake, we could not get our baggage pony up this stair. But in any case, we cannot take the poor beast into the mines," said Gandalf. "The road under the mountains is a dark road, and there are places narrow and steep which he cannot tread, even if we can." "Poor old Bill," said Frodo. "I had not thought of that. And poor Sam. I wonder what he will say." "I'm sorry," said Gandalf. "Poor Bill has been a useful companion, and it goes to my heart to turn him adrift now. I would have traveled lighter and brought no animal, least of all this one that Sam is fond of, if I had my way. I feared all along that we should be obliged to take this road."
Sam's gonna be sad.
He's gonna be sad. Should we continue on?
What are we at?
50 minutes.
Okay,
keep going?
Sure.
Keep going? The day was drawing to its end, and cold stars were glinting in the sky high above the sunset when the company, with all the speed they could, climbed up the slopes and reached the side of the lake. In breadth, it looked to be no more than 2 or 3 furlongs at the widest point. How far it stretched away southward they could not see in the failing light, but its northern end was no more than half a mile from where they stood. And between the stony ridges that enclosed the valley and the water's edge, there was a rim of open ground. They hurried forward, for they had still a mile or 2 to go before they could reach the point on the far shore that Gandalf was making for, and then he had still to find the door. When they came to the northernmost corner of the lake, they found a narrow creek that barred their way. "Ah, I know where that is in Lotro."
Me too.
Okay.
Listen to it right here.
Oh, boy. It was green and stagnant, thrust out like a slimy arm towards the enclosing hills. Gimli strode forward undeterred and found that the water was shallow, no more than ankle deep at the edge. Behind them they walked in file, threading their way with care, for under the weedy pools were sliding and greasy stones, and footing was treacherous. Frodo shuddered with disgust at the touch of the dark, unclean water on his feet. As Sam, the last of the company, led Bill up onto the dry ground on the far side, there came a soft sound, a swish followed by a plop, as if a fish had disturbed the still surface of the water. Turning quickly, they saw ripples black-edged with shadow in the waning light. Great rings were widening outwards from a point far out in the lake. There was a bubbling noise, and then silence. The dusk deepened, and the last gleams of the sunset were veiled in clouds. Gandalf now pressed on at a great pace, and the others followed as quickly as they could. They reached the strip of dry land between the lake and the cliffs. It was narrow, often hardly a dozen yards across, and encumbered with fallen rock and stones, but they found a way, hugging the cliff and keeping as far from the dark water as they might. A mile southward along the shore, they came upon holly trees. Stumps and dead boughs were rotting in the shallows, the remains, it seemed, of old thickets or of a hedge that had once lined the road across the drowned valley. But close under the cliffs there stood still, strong and living, 2 tall trees, larger than any trees of holly that Frodo had ever seen or imagined. Their great roots spread from the wall to the water. Under the looming cliffs, they had looked like mere bushes when seen far off from the top of the stair, but now they towered overhead, stiff, dark, and silent, throwing deep night shadows about their feet, standing like sentinels or sentinel pillars at the end of the road. "Well, here we are at last," said Gandalf. "Here the elven way from Holing ended. Holly was the token of the people of the land." Well, if it's Holly and the land is Holland. It's Holland.
Yeah.
Not Holleen. I've been saying Holleen. It's Holland. Okay, there. Mystery solved. Yay! Only took a couple of episodes. Holly was the token of the people of that land, and they planted it here to mark the end of their domain. For the west door was made chiefly for their use in their traffic with the lords of Moria. Those were happier days, when there was still close friendship at times between folk of different race, even between dwarves and elves. "It was not the fault of the dwarves that the friendship waned," said Gimli. "I have not heard that it was the fault of the elves," said Legolas. "I have heard both," said Gandalf, "and I will not give judgment now. But I beg you two, Legolas and Gimli, at least to be friends and to help me. I need you both. The doors are shut and hidden, and the sooner we find them, the better. Night is at hand." Turning to the others, he said, "While I am searching, will you each make ready to enter the mines? For here I fear we must say farewell to our good beast of burden. You must lay aside much of the stuff that we brought against bitter weather. You will not need it inside, nor, I hope, when we come through and journey on down into the south. Instead, each of us must take a share of what the pony carried, especially the food and the water skins." "But you can't leave poor Bill behind in this forsaken place, Mr. Gandalf," cried Sam, angry and distressed. "I won't have it, and that's flat. After he has come so far and all." "I'm sorry, Sam," said the wizard, "but when the doors open, I do not think you will be able to drag your Bill inside into the long dark of Moria. You will have to choose between Bill and your master." "He'd follow Mr. Frodo into a dragon's den if I let him," protested Sam. "It'd be nothing short of murder to turn him loose with all these wolves about." "It will be short of murder, I hope," said Gandalf, plosive there. He laid his hand on the pony's head and spoke in a low voice. "Go with words of guard and guiding on you," he said. "You are a wise beast, and you have learned much in Rivendell. Make your ways to the places where you can find grass, and so come in time to Elrond's house, or wherever you wish to go. There, Sam. he will have quite as much chance of escaping wolves and getting home as we have. Isn't that awesome?
Yep, I love the words of guiding and guard.
Yes, it's a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a benediction, basically. Getting back to Aaron's benediction. Well, getting back to Elrond's benediction. We talked about that several episodes ago. Sam stood sullenly by the pony and returned no answer. Bill, seeming to understand well what was going on, nuzzled up to him, putting his nose to Sam's ear. Sam burst into tears and fumbled with the straps, unlading all the pony's packs and throwing them on the ground. I bet you he was throwing them on the ground.
Yeah, like a fitful child or something.
Yeah, he's angry. The others sorted out the goods, making a pile of all that could be left behind and dividing up the rest. When this was done, they turned to watch Gandalf. He appeared to have done nothing. He was standing between the two trees, gazing at the blank wall of the cliff as if he would bore a hole into it with his eyes. Gimli was wandering about, tapping the stone here and there with his axe. Legolas was pressed against the rock as if listening. "Well, here we are and all ready," said Merry. "But where are the doors? I can't see any sign of them." "Dwarf doors are not made to be seen when shut," said Gimli. "They are invisible, and their own makers cannot find them or open them if their secret is forgotten." "But this door was not made to be a secret known only to dwarves," said Gandalf, coming suddenly to life and turning round. "Unless things are altogether changed, eyes that know what to look for may discover the signs." He walked forward to the wall, right between the shadow of the trees where the was a smooth space, and over this he passed his hands to and fro, muttering words under his breath. Then he stepped back. "Look," he said. "Can you see anything now?" The moon now shone upon the gray face of the rock, but they could see nothing else for a while. Then slowly on the surface, where the wizard's hands had passed, faint lines appeared, like slender veins of silver running in the stone. At first they were no more than pale gossamer threads, so fine that they only twinkled fitfully where the moon caught them. But steadily they grew broader and clearer until their design could be guessed. At the top, as high as Gandalf could reach, was an arch of interlacing letters in an elvish character. Below, though the threads were in places blurred or broken, the outline could be seen of an anvil and a hammer surmounted by a crown with 7 stars. Beneath these again were 2 trees, each bearing crescent moons. More clearly than all else, there shone forth in the middle of the door a single star with many rays. "There are the emblems of Durin," cried Gimli. "And there is the tree of the High Elves," said Legolas. "And there is the star of the House of Fëanor," said Gandalf. "They are wrought of Ithilden, that mirrors only starlight and moonlight and sleeps until it is touched by one who speaks words now long forgotten in Middle-earth. It is long since I heard them, and I thought deeply before I could recall them to my mind." Nice picture there. Oh, you don't have the picture in yours?
Oh, it's right here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
"What does the writing say?" asked Frodo, who was trying to decipher the inscription on the arch. "I thought I knew the elf letters, but I cannot read these." "The words are in the elven tongue of the west of Middle-earth in the elder days," answered Gandalf. "But they do not say anything of importance to us. They say only, 'The doors of Durin, Lord of Moria, speak, friend, and enter.' And underneath small and faint is written, 'I, Narvi, made them. Celebrimbor of Holland drew these signs.'" What does it mean by speak, friend, and enter? Asked Merry. That is plain enough, said Gimli. If you are a friend, speak the password, and the doors will open, and you can enter. Yes, said Gandalf, these doors are probably governed by words. Some dwarf gates will only open at special times or for particular persons, and some have locks and keys that are still needed when all necessary times and words are known. These doors have no key. In the days of Durin, they were not secret. They usually stood open and outwards. And doorwards sat here. But if they were shut, any who knew the opening word could speak it and pass in. At least so it is recorded, is it not, Gimli? It is, said the dwarf. But what the word was is not remembered. Narvi and his craft and all his kindred have vanished from the earth. But do you not know the words? The word, Gandalf? Asked Boromir in surprise. No, said the wizard. The others looked dismayed. Only Aragorn, who knew Gandalf well, remained silent and unmoved.
That would be pretty shocking. He takes you all the way here, and then he's like, I don't know.
You don't know the word? No. No, I don't know the word, but I just love that. Aragorn's just sitting.
Mm-hmm.
I love Aragorn.
And it shows that, in terms of, well, in their own respect, but wiseness.
Yeah.
Is that a word?
Wisdom.
Wisdom, yes. Aragorn is just below Gandalf, with Gandalf being the most wise of them.
It also shows that they have a very close relationship. Mm-hmm. They know each other. Aragorn knows Gandalf. He's not reacting to this. That just tells a lot, and we find out more, especially in the appendices with the hunt for Gollum and things like that. Shall we continue on?
Well, I'd like to go till they get in, but I don't think...
Well, we have a big discussion.
Okay.
Coming up. I'll keep going.
Well, no, if you have one, get to that and then we'll
we're at an hour and here we are discussing. This is called producing on the fly, dear listeners, dear fellowship and company members. We're at an hour and 3 minutes now.
Okay.
How long do you want to go?
Well, let's get to your big thing. If you can.
If I can. Maybe I'll lead up to the big discussion and then we'll save that for next episode.
Sounds good.
Then what was the use of bringing us to this accursed spot? Cried Boromir, glancing back with a shudder at the dark water. You told us that you had once passed through the mines. How could that be if you did not know how to enter? The answer to your first question, Boromir, said the wizard, is that I do not know the word yet. But we shall soon see. And, he added, with a glint in his eye under their bristling brows, you may ask what is the use of my deeds when they are proved useless. As for your other question, do you doubt my tale? Or have you no wits left? I did not enter this way. I came from the east. If you wish to know, I will tell you that these doors open outwards. From the inside, you may thrust them open with your hands. From the outside, nothing will move them save the spell of command. They cannot be forced inward. What are you going to do then? Asked Pippin, undaunted by the wizard's bristling brows. He really is a fool of Took.
Yep.
Knock on the doors with your head, Peregrine Took, said Gandalf, but if that does not shatter them, and I am allowed a little peace from foolish questions, I will seek for the opening words. I once knew every spell in all the tongues of elves or men or orcs that was ever used for such a purpose. I can still remember 10 score of them without searching my mind. 10 score.
What is
I can
that?
still remember 10 score. Well, a score is 20. 200?
Wow. Without searching his mind.
Yeah, without searching his mind, just off the tip of his tongue. 200 spells. But only a few trials, I think, will be needed. And I shall not have to call on Gimli for words of the secret dwarf tongue that they teach to none. The opening words were elvish, like the writing on the arch. That seemed certain. He stepped up to the rock again and lightly touched with his staff the silver star in the middle beneath the signs of the anvil. Anon Edhelden Helen Edro Hi Amen. Fenas Nagothrum Lasto Beth Lamen. He said in a commanding voice. I couldn't do a commanding voice because I didn't even know how to pronounce it. The silver lines faded, but the blank gray stone did not stir. I'm getting tired. Many times he repeated these words in different order or varied them. Then he tried other spells, one after another, speaking now faster and louder, and now soft and slow. Then he spoke many single words of elvish speech. Nothing happened. The cliff towered into the night, and the countless stars were kindled. The wind blew cold, and the doors stood fast. Again, Gandalf approached the wall, and lifting up his arms, he spoke in tones of command and rising wrath. "Edro! Edro!" he cried, and struck the rock with his staff. "Open! Open!" he shouted, and followed it with the same command in every language that had ever been spoken in the west of Middle-earth. Then he threw his staff on the ground and sat down in silence. That's like me. At that moment, from far off, the wind bore to their listening ears the howling of wolves. Bill the pony started in fear, and Sam sprang to his side and whispered softly to him. Do not let him run away, said Boromir. It seems that we shall need him still if the wolves do not find us. How I hate this foul pool! He stooped, and picking up a large stone, he cast it far into the dark water. The stone vanished with a soft slap. But at the same instant, there was a swish and a bubble. Great rippling rings formed on the surface out beyond where the stone had fallen, and they moved slowly toward the foot of the cliff. "Why did you do that, Boromir?" said Frodo. "I hate this place too, and I'm afraid. I don't know of what. Not of wolves, or the dark behind the doors, but of something else. I'm afraid of the pool. Don't disturb it." "I wish we could get away," said Merry. "Why doesn't Gandalf do something quick?" said Pippin. Gandalf took no notice of them. He sat with his head bowed, either in despair or in anxious thought. The mournful howling of the wolves was heard again. The ripples on the water grew and came closer. Some were already lapping on the shore. With a suddenness that startled them all, the wizard sprang to his feet. He was laughing. "I have it!" he cried. Of course! Absurdly simple, like most riddles when you see the answer. Picking up his staff, he stood before the rock and said in a clear voice, "Melon." The star shone out briefly and faded again. Then silently the great doorway was outlined, though not a crack or joint had been visible before. Slowly it divided in the middle and swung outwards inch by inch until both doors lay back against the wall. Through the opening a shadowy stair could be seen, climbing steeply up, but beyond the lower steps the darkness was deeper than the night. The company stared in wonder. "I was wrong after all," said Gandalf. "And Gimli too. Merry of all people was on the right track. The opening word was inscribed on the archway all the time. The translation should have been, 'Say friend and enter.' I had only to speak the elvish word for friend, and the doors opened. Quite simple. Too simple for a learned lore master in these suspicious days. Those were happier times. Now let us go." The translation should have been, "Say friend and enter." John chapter 10, Verses 7 through 10, out of the New American Standard Bible, the NASB. So Jesus said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. I am the door. If anyone enters through me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. Revelation chapter 3, verse 20 out of the NASB. Behold, Jesus says, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and will dine with him and he with me. Now you may be asking, why is he bringing up these passages? Just because Jesus says he's the door and then here's a door here? Well, so far in this entire chapter, actually since they've left Rivendell, because that is really the beginning point of the company, of the fellowship, and their journeys together, I can't help but think of the Pilgrim's Progress. John Bunyan, a book written 400 years ago that was, for many centuries, the second most popular book only behind the Bible. And I know that Tolkien is familiar with the Pilgrim's Progress, even though he loathes allegory, whereas the Pilgrim's Progress is purely allegory. And the beginning of the book, we know, is a man named Christian that lives in a city of destruction. He has this book, and he's reading in this book, and it is just causing him torment. And his wife and kids are worried about him, and at first they decide to ignore him as he goes into his room. Just ignore him and maybe this will pass. And then they that's not working, they resort to chiding him, giving him a hard time. So when the morning was come and they would know how he did, he told them worse and worse. He also set to talking to them again, but they began to be hardened. They also thought to drive away his distemper by harsh and surly carriages to him. Sometimes they would deride, sometimes they would chide, and sometimes they would quite neglect him. Wherefore he began to retire himself to his chamber, to pray for and pity them, and also to console his own misery. He would also walk solitarily in the fields, sometimes reading and sometimes praying, and thus for some days he spent his time. Now I, the dreamer of the dream, now I saw upon a time when he was walking in the fields that he was, as he was wont, reading in his book and greatly distressed in his mind. And as he read, he burst out, and as he had done before, crying, "What shall I do to be saved?" I saw also that he looked this way and that way, as if he would run. Yet he stood still, because, as I perceived, he could not tell which way to go. I looked then and saw a man named Evangelist coming to him, and asked, "Wherefore dost thou cry? Why are you crying?" He answered, "Sir, I perceive by the book in my hand that I am condemned to die, and after that to come to judgment. And I find that I am not willing to do the first, nor able to do the second." Then said Evangelist, "Why not willing to die, since this life is attended with so many evils?" The man answered, "Because I fear that this burden is upon my back. That this burden upon my back will sink me lower than the grave, and I shall fall into Tophet. And sir, if I be not fit to go to prison, I am not fit. If I be, this is old, this is archaic English here.
Yes.
If I be not fit to go to prison, I am not fit. I am sure to go to judgment, and from thence to execution. And the thoughts of these things make me cry." He has a burden on his back, and we have likened the ring to the burden. Frodo as a scapegoat, bearing the burden of Middle-earth out into the wilderness. Then said Evangelist, "If this be thy condition, why standest thou still?" He answered, "Because I know not whither to go." Then he gave him a parchment roll, and there was written within, "Flee from the wrath to come." The man therefore read it, and looking upon Evangelist, very carefully said, "Whither must I fly?" Then said Evangelist, pointing with his finger over a very wide field, "Do you see yon wicket gate? Do you see yon gates of Mordor?" The man said, "No." Then said the other, "Do you see yonder shining light?" He said, "I think I do." Then said Evangelist, "Keep that light in your eye, and go up directly thereto, so shalt thou see the gate, at which when thou knockest, it shall be told thee what thou shalt do." When thou knockest. When you knock. "I am the door of the sheep," Jesus says. "Anyone who enters through me shall be saved." But you have to knock on the door. You have to know the words. They're quite simple, really. Too simple for a learned lore master in these suspicious days. Speak, friend, and enter. Thinking of that old hymn, I'll be a friend to Jesus until my life shall end. He is the door, and all ye have to do is speak, friend, and enter. So I saw in my dream that the man began to run. Now, he had not run far from his own door, but his wife and children, perceiving it, began to cry after him to return. But the man put his fingers in his ears and ran on crying, "Life! Life! Eternal life!" So he looked not behind him, but fled toward the middle of the plain. The neighbors also came out to see him run, and as he ran, some mocked, others threatened, and some cried after him to return. And among those that did so, there were two that resolved to fetch him back by force. The name of the one was Obstinate, and the name of the other was Pliable. Now, by this time, the man was got a good distance from them, but, however, they were resolved to pursue him, which they did, and in a little time they overtook him. Then said the man, "Neighbors, wherefore are ye come?" They said, "To persuade you to go back with us." But he said, "That can by no means be. You dwell," said he, "in the city of destruction, the place also where I was born." Merry wants to go back, or Pippin wants to go back to Rivendell. Gandalf says, "That'll only be for a short time. It will be destroyed. It is a city of destruction." Pippin wants to go back to the Shire, where it's safe and everything's fine. Gandalf says, "That is the city of destruction. It will not last." If we do not succeed in our mission, all is lost. I see it to be so, and dying there, sooner or later, you will sink lower than the grave into a place that burns with fire and brimstone. Be content, good neighbors, and go along with me. "What?" said Obstinate. "And leave our friends and our comforts behind us? Leave our hobbit holes behind us? Leave the comforts of Elrond's halls, his well-laden tables?" "Yes," said Christian, for that was his name, "because all of which you shall forsake is not worthy to be compared with a little of that which I am seeking to enjoy. And if you will go along with me and hold it, you shall fare as I myself, for there where I go is enough and to spare. Come away and prove my words." Obstinate says, "What are the things you seek, since you leave all the world to find them?" He said, "Man, we've got it all. We've got it all here in the last homely house." That's what Pippin's saying. I had it all. "I seek an inheritance incorruptible, undefiled, that fadeth not away, and it is laid up in heaven and safe there, to be bestowed at the time appointed on them that diligently seek it." Read it so, if you will, in my book. Those that diligently seek it. Aragorn says, "Do not give up hope. Have faith." "Tush," said Obstinate. "Away with your book. Will you go back with us or no?" "No, not I," said the other, "because I have laid my hand to the plow." No one who has laid his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of heaven. We read that, I believe, was one of the passages I read at the beginning of the show. Pippin, don't look back. Remember Lot's wife. Obstinate says, "Come then, neighbor Pliable, let us turn again and go home without him. There's a company of these crazy-headed coxcombs that, when they take a fancy by the end, are wiser in their own eyes than 7 men that can render a reason." Then said Pliable, "Don't revile. If what the good Christian says is true, the things he looks for after are better than ours. My heart inclines to go with my neighbor." "What? More fools still! Be ruled by me and go back. Who knows whither such a brain-sick fellow will lead you? Go back, and be wise." Christian says, "Nay, but do thou come with thy neighbor, Pliable. There are such things to be had, which I spoke of, and many more glorious besides. If you believe not me, read here in this book. And for the truth of what is expressed therein, behold, all is confirmed by the blood of him that made it." "Well, neighbor Obstinate," said Pliable, "I begin to come to a point. I intend to go along with this good man and to cast in my lot with him. But, my good companion, do you know the way to this desired place?" "I am directed by a man whose name is Evangelist to speed me to a little gate that is before us, where we shall receive instructions about the way." "Come then, good neighbor, let us be going." Then they went both together. Obstinate says, "And I will go back to my place," said Obstinate. "I will be no companion of such misled, fantastical fellows. I want to read more. I want to read all the way up to where he finally gets to yon wicket gate. But I'm going to leave that for you listeners. Reread The Pilgrim's Progress if it's been a while since you have listened to it. And it is there are so many parallels to what we're reading in The Lord of the Rings right now. You just have to get to this gate. And now they're at the gate. And if you knock, if you speak, friend, and enter, that gate is Jesus Christ. And as we know in The Pilgrim's Progress, once he gets through yon wicket gate, it just doesn't turn into roses and sunshine. His journey continues to be arduous, just as the fellowship, the company, their journey is going to continue to be rough. The parallels are just absolutely amazing. But we'll stop there for today.
You need say no more. We'd best get a move on. There are still goblins about.
Oh, bother. More mountains?
No, don't you see? The sun is setting in the west, behind the mountains. We're on the other side, to the edge of the land beyond.
Any thoughts, Micah?
You have opened my eyes to the parallels. I did notice some when I was reviewing the chapter, but especially with Pippin being pliable.
Yes, Pippin is, but he's not obstinate. Let's not say that he's obstinate, but as what we find out with pliable is as soon as they fall into the slough or the slough, I prefer, it can be pronounced both ways. I prefer slough. The slough of despond. That's where I'm out of here. Mm-hmm. Right now, gosh, I should have read more, but we're asking a lot of the listeners today. Maybe we'll pick up with that next episode.
Yes.
Because the Slough of Despond is where Pippin is. I mean, the gates of the Red Horn Gate, Caradhras, Pippin says, dude, this is too much for me. This is Elrond said I shouldn't even be here anyway, so I want to go back, you know? As soon as somebody mentions going back to Rivendell, he perks right up. Yes, he's hoping. Yes, please, say we're going back. And so he was fine to go, right? He jumps right in there. You'll have to tie me in a sack and send me back to Hobbiton to keep me from going on this journey, right? That's like pliable right now in the Pilgrim's Progress. As soon as they get caught in the Slough of Despond, not even to the gate. Not even to the gate yet. And all you have to do at the gate, and I just love it. I love it because Christian, he gets sidetracked by Mr. Worldly Wiseman, right? Mm-hmm. And sent to the city of morality to talk to Mr. Legalist. Legality, yes. Sorry. And then, when Evangelist meets up with them again, it says, "What are you doing, man? And then Christian instantly, I've lost my chance. And he says, "No. Go to yon wicket gate." And as soon as he gets there, what does he say? Will you allow me in still? And the man at the gate said, "With all my heart, yes." And that tugs at my heartstrings, because that's the God that we serve. It's grace and mercy. With all of my heart, Jesus says, knock on the door. Speak, friend, and enter. Be my friend and enter. One of the things that I love about Abraham is that God called Abraham my friend. God calls Abraham his friend. I want to be a friend to God. I want him to say, Michael is my friend. Speak, friend, and enter. Man, just so powerful. So powerful. Can I think of another adjective? Help me out here. It's just powerful. But Michael, we have what are all these?
What on earth are these?
Replies to the party invitations.
Good gracious.
Yeah, good gracious. It's been a month since the last episode, and we got many replies to the party invitations. Let's start off with a voicemail from patron saint Ron of the South Farthing.
Greetings, dear friends at Secret Fire Podcast. Michael, Micah, and Brendan. This is your old buddy Ron. Been listening to some of your wonderful, excellent episodes, but far too few of them, Ring Goes South Part 2. Really enjoy listening to your insights. And I mean, who doesn't like a good allegory? Well, Tolkien didn't, so. But anyway, you guys keep talking about the prophet, priest, and king, and believe me, I really, really see that. Now, I just can't get this out of my head is Frodo, to me, seems so much like the Apostle Paul. He's got his friends there, which could easily be Barnabas and Timothy and Silas even. Or John Mark, and he's got his quest. Eventually, he said he wanted to go to Spain, and he's going places, and he thinks he's headed off to doom. He doesn't know if he's coming back, and we know the story. He doesn't eventually, but he makes it all the way to Rome. He goes to the deepest, darkest place for a Christian to be, and he's burying something very precious. Which is the gospel, not to be destroyed, but to be disseminated, Anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you. Just keep up the good work, and it's been far too long between episodes. So I miss you guys, and great to hear you again. Bye-bye.
Yes, and patron saint Ron of the South Farthing. Well, he's a patron saint because he supports the ongoing work here at Secret Fire Podcast and the Great Commission Transmission Network as a whole. And he always, he likes to disseminate wisdom and his biblical wisdom. And you're spot on, brother. Frodo is a great picture of the Apostle Paul. But see, Paul is a great picture of Jesus Christ. And that's why Paul says, imitate me as I imitate Christ. So great points. Absolutely. And we can see that everything that you brought up playing out in this entire epic right here. So thank you for sharing that with us and pointing out yet another parallel. So now we gave people, everybody's going to go, oh, I need to reread. It's been a while since I read The Pilgrim's Progress, so I'm going to need to reread that again, and then I'm going to consider how Frodo is like Paul, or really, I mean, many of the apostles and their journey. So thank you for that. We also heard from patron saint Philip. He left a comment on our last episode, The Ring Goes South, Part 4. That was episode number 32 of the Secret Fire podcast, and he gave us another haiku.
Oh, yay.
He will be the patron saint in charge of haikus. The dwarves go swimming with little hairy women, my wee lad Gimli.
Very nice.
Yes. That's my wee lad, Gimli. I don't know where that is.
Goblin mutant.
Oh, what was that?
Goblin mutant. That's my wee lad, Gimli.
Yeah. What's that little goblin mutant?
How insulting.
Yes. All right. We also received a couple of iTunes reviews that we are so grateful for. The first one was by Jedi Anarian. I like that.
That's
5 stars in the iTunes podcast store, whatever that's called now, Apple Podcasts. Such a great podcast to listen to. I enjoy it a lot, especially with the deep theological analysis on Tolkien's works. Any Tolkien fan should give this a listen. They may return with much, much more. What a kind review. Mm-hmm. To say that if you listen to the Secret Fire podcast, you may return with much more. I love that. The second one was written by Taylor W.S. 5 stars. Says a podcast of special magnificence.
Ooh.
These guys really enjoy Tolkien's Middle-earth world having read The Fellowship of the Ring, it has been so much fun revisiting the chapters they discuss in the book, as well as discovering things and hearing perspectives that I didn't think of. That's what I've enjoyed most. It's a fun and relaxing listen and has made mowing my yard much more bearable while I listen. If you enjoy The Lord of the Rings and talking about it, then these are your podcast homies. Please keep them coming, and I look forward to the next books. Thank you so much, Taylor W.S. That really, those iTunes reviews just help other people discover the podcast, really. And so, and your encouraging words are what encourages people that are just coming by. Well, should I give this thing a try? I mean, these guys talk and talk and talk. This is over an hour and a half episode.
You got at least 2 yards worth of
yes
of episode here.
You can do the front and the back and maybe your neighbors and, well, except for Ron of the South Farthing. He lives on a farm out there, so
this will get a third of it.
Yeah, not even that. He'll let us know. Ron, let us know how much mowing or upkeep episode of Secret Fire podcast is worth. And that's it for our listener feedback. So let's just throw it out there. What stood out to you in this part of the chapter, A Journey in the Dark? Let us know. We'll give you all the ways to contact us here in just a moment. But it is... Did I already play Best Get a Move On?
Yes.
I did. Okay. The Secret Fire podcast is live in the GCT Network studio whenever we are actually live in the studio. We'll send out notifications when we're broadcasting on our Twitch page.
The best way to get notified when we're live in the studio is via Twitter at Secret Fire Cast. And you can join us on the Ark and Stone server in Lord of the Rings Online at lotro.com.
Yes. Send us email to secretfire@gctnetwork.com or call in to the Hobbit hotline like patron Saint Ron of the South Farthing did at 507-407-GCTN, or our backup hotline at Crick Hollow. Fatty Bolger is standing by, 507-407-4286. You can search for Secret Fire Podcast in all of your favorite podcast apps, such as iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, or whatever you use. We're there. Our theme song, Hobbit's Dance, is from the album Memories of Middle-earth by Brobdingnagian Bards. Find out more about them and buy all the music on their website at thebards.net. To find out more about the Secret Fire podcast, as well as our other shows, including Finding Christ in Cinema and The Theonauts, visit our main website at gctnetwork.com. Hey, if you like the Secret Fire podcast, please share it with your friends and review the show in iTunes. But if you love the Secret Fire podcast, please consider becoming a patron and sustaining member of the fellowship on our Patreon page at patreon.com/GCTN. That's patreon.com/GCTN. And until next time, we regret to tell you
that this is the end. I'm going away. I'm leaving. Now, goodbye.
Goodbye. Bye. It was tied to a holly tree.
When will it end?
What?
It was tied to? Can't tie it to everything.
Oh, there's always something to tie it to. Yes. Hey, if you've been watching on the video, thank you very much for joining us. So Micah, I don't know when we'll be back in the studio.
Not next week?
I mean, if we're free, I just don't remember when your graduation is.
It's not. I have one more Friday, and the next Friday after that.
Okay, so maybe we can do it next weekend?
Yep. Sounds good.
That way I'll keep fresh in my mind with the Pilgrim's Progress and everything. But anyway, we'll upload this video to our YouTube page as well. But the best thing to do is subscribe to the audio podcast in your favorite podcast app, as we just mentioned. And again, thank you very much, and we will see you next time here from the studio in, now we're going to be right at the gates.
Sit right in.
Oh, boy. We'll see you next time.